It's time. The jar has spoken again. Well, not yet. It's going to speak again. The infamous jar is going to pick some more books. We need another fiction and another nonfiction off my shelf to read and see whether I'm going to keep it or unhaul it. So let's see what the fates have for me today from this jar. Let's see. Dig on right down in there. What do I got here? This one is a nonfiction. We have 6 War Years by Barry Broadfoot. Okay. I'll find that one after. And we need a fiction. What do we have here? We have... That one's not fiction. That one's a non-fiction. There. What's this one? That one is also not a fiction. That one's a book of poetry. What do we got here? My cats are fighting in the background. Would you guys stop it? We have Sounder by Armstrong. Second shelf of the closet. That, I think it's a kid's book. So we'll see. I will find those and I will come back. We found the books. So first of all, I have 6 War Years, 1939 to 1945. Memories of Canadians at Home and Abroad by Barry Broadfoot. Now these Barry Broadfoot books are super interesting. I'm actually really looking forward to reading this. I've had it for a while but haven't ever read this one. I've read through all of his one of the 1930s because of my writing. And basically what he does is he went through back at the time when he wrote these, which was a lot closer to the time when this happened. When was this published? Originally published in, looks like 1976 or 74. It was originally published in 1974. So there were still a lot of people living who had lived through the war years at that time. And what he did is he went around Canada and he interviewed people who had lived through those years. And it's actually written, it's actually just their stories that he recorded in their own voices, which is super interesting to me. I got a lot of good color and that for my 1930s books from reading his one about the Great Depression. So I'm really looking forward to this one. This one's all about people who lived through World War II. So very interesting. And the other book is a kid's book. It's called Sounder by William H. Armstrong. And this one I have never read. I bought it quite a while ago when I was picking up award-winning kids books so that I could learn a little bit more about what kind of books were winning awards. And this one was the 1970 Newbery Medal winner. And basically it is about a young boy living in the 19th century South. And it's about him and his coon dog Sounder, and basically life in the South in the 19th century. So we'll see what that ends up being about, what the story ends up being about. It shouldn't take me very long to finish this one. It's definitely a chapter book. His reading level is 4.9. So it won't take me very long to read through this one. And so because it'll take me a lot longer to read the nonfiction, I probably will pick another book once I'm done this one. But I will start with this one and that one, and we will let you know how that goes. Hello everyone. So quick update. I actually read this whole book last night. I haven't tried the nonfiction one yet, but I did read this whole one last night. It wasn't very long, It's like 119 pages. And so I'm going to pick another book from my jar. But I thought I would tell you what I thought of this one first. So this one, it won the Newbery Medal for children's fiction in 1970, I believe. It was written in 1969. And I can tell why it won the Newbery Medal, because of, the subject matter and those sorts of things. It's basically what it is. It's about this boy in the 19th century South, and his father is a sharecropper. They're going through really hard times. They're very poor. And then one day he comes home and there's a ham cooking, which is unusual. And it turns out that his father, this isn't really a spoiler because it happens in like the first couple chapters, but it turns out that his father stole the ham. And so he gets arrested, and it's about the boy and sort of about his dog named Sounder. And this book, I ended up giving it 2 stars. And now I don't really like necessarily rating kids' books because I'm not the target audience. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that when I was 9 or 10, which is the age range this is meant for, this book would have completely traumatized me because of some of the things that happened to the dog. And I know back in the 60s and 70s, for some reason, animal books tended to be, like Old Yeller and Where the Red Fern Grows and things like that. Which, by the way, Where the Red Fern Grows also traumatized me as a child when babysitter made me watch it. And I have never forgotten that. And because I was very, very sensitive to animals, and especially animal cruelty and that sort of stuff. So there is a bit of that in here, which, like I say, would have completely traumatized me as a 10-year-old. The story itself is very interesting. It's a bit of a discussion on racism and the effects that it had on the boy. But I found, like, normally I would have probably rated it a little higher, except that I really didn't like the guy's writing style. He was trying to make this universal from what I've read after looking it up online. And so throughout the whole story, the only character that's actually given a name is the dog. The boy is just called the boy. His father's just called his father, his mother, his brother, his sisters. Like, through the whole thing, they just call him the boy. And I think, and I don't know if maybe it was a cultural thing back in the 60s and 70s to try and do that and make it like this universal story for children. But to me, I always connect better when the characters have a name. And if I was a kid reading this, I would feel like would feel no connection to the character. Like, I felt more connection to the dog because he had a name, And so if you're trying to teach kids something about, say, racism or, an important topic like that, make the characters somebody that they can relate to, somebody they can imagine as being their friend or something like that. Because when you just call the character the boy through the whole thing to try and make it, universal so that everybody can, relate to them, that doesn't help you relate to the character the way giving him a name would have. If, like, I'm thinking to, reading, now I know it's an adult book, but reading Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I read that this year and gave it 5 stars and just loved it. And I learned so much, and how, like, just the emotion and the empathy and just learning so much about slavery and about, racism and everything from that book. But part of it was because the reason why it stuck with me and I learned so much from it was because the characters were so deep, and like, you learned the names of these different slaves, and you really felt like you knew them. You felt like they were your friends or your relatives, or, because the main character was related in ways to them. And so you felt like you really knew them as part of the story. And so it was easier to relate to them and to understand better what they were going through. And when the character is just called the boy and the man, you know, it's not really relatable in my opinion. So that was my thoughts on it. I'm going to unhaul it, and I'm probably going to put it on our little book sale. And if it doesn't sell, I'll probably put it in one of the little libraries, little free libraries, just because it is a kid's book, and there are kids who would probably be interested in that. Like I say, I know for me as a kid, I would have been completely traumatized by by what happens to the dog. Just because I was such a crazy animal lover when I was a kid. And that's why I was always so scared to read books, especially older books that were written about animals and their relationship with people back when I was younger, is because I was so afraid that bad stuff was going to happen to the animals. And I know that that's not like the main part of the story, but I just know as a kid that would have devastated me when stuff happened. And the stuff that happened to the boy too was quite bad. But again, because he didn't have a name, he just seemed kind of like a generic boy, not somebody that I could relate to. And I think as a child especially, I would have related to him a lot more if he had a name. So that was my thoughts on that one. I gave it 2 stars, or 2.5 stars, I think is what I gave it. 2 stars on Goodreads. Yeah. So anyways, I am going to draw another fiction book from the jar. So we'll see what I get this time. Okay, what is this one? Yellows. This is one of my other type of books. Without Remorse by Tom Clancy. So that is in one of the bins at the other house. So I will find that one and give it a try. It's been a long time since I read a Tom Clancy book, and we'll see if I'm still at all interested in them. And I will let you know what that one's about once I go and find it. Hey everybody. So I thought I would give you a little update on where I'm at with the books I'm reading, because I'm actually in the middle of 4 books, not including anything for other vlogs. Hi Raven. I'm sure everybody loves seeing your bum. Can you get up there? I'm in the middle of 4 books that aren't related to other vlogs that I'm doing. So I'll tell you first about the ones for the Read It and Unhaul It again. So 6 Warriors, I just started this one. I actually just read like the introduction, which and now I'm going to get into the main part of the people's stories. And like I said before, these books are kind of cool because he basically tells everything just in their own words, directly from the people, from the interviews that he did. So it's always interesting to see, because you get to see what was important to people during that time. And it's something that I noticed even in 2020 during the pandemic. You know, you were living through history, something historical happening, but you didn't necessarily focus on that 100% of the time. And that's kind of what he said in the introduction, is that there was a lot of people who, you know, all these big things were going on, and yet they were just trying to live their lives and trying to make it through and survive, basically. And so that's why I find these books so interesting, is you don't get necessarily the feel for, you know, the big world events as much as you get the feel for, you know, day-to-day life in that period and how people coped with things that were going on. So looking forward to that one. I did also find the Tom Clancy one, Without Remorse, that was down in my mom's basement. And yesterday I read the first couple chapters. I'm on like page 36, and it's too early to tell whether I'm going to like it and keep reading it or not. So I'm going to keep going for now. It's sort of interesting, but it is, you know, basically like a military spy thriller, and I'm not really into that anymore. like I used to be. I read more of these type of books when I was in university and when I was studying engineering and that sort of thing. So we'll see. I haven't decided yet whether I'm willing to spend 750 pages on a military spy thriller or if I am going to end up just unhauling some of them. I'm not sure, but I'll decide. The other books that I'm reading right now, I'm reading this one here by Shirley Rousseau Murphy. It's called Cat Raised the Dead. This is the third book in the Joe Gray mystery series. It's a series of cozy mysteries that I've had for a long time. I actually first read this book back in high school, and it was actually the first one of this series that I read. And I really enjoyed it at the time. And so then I had collected most of the series, but I never actually read all of them. So I decided I would do a reread of that series and just see how it went. And of course, I'm enjoying it so far. Basically, this story, so you have Joe Gray and his girlfriend, Cat Dulcie, and they discover that they have the ability to have human speech. And there's a whole backstory to that in the rest of the series. And they take to solving mysteries, which leads to all kinds of fun and adventure and all sorts of things. And in this one, Joe and Dulcie end up joining a pet, basically a Pet the Pet program at a nursing home, because Dulcie has been going to it and she is hearing rumors from one of the old ladies that there might be something going on there. So I'm not going to tell you any more about it because I don't want to spoil it, but it is really good so far. I really like the characters. Joe is very much a tomcat character, and he's kind of your, oh, I'm a manly guy and I'm not going to be into this and I'm not going to be into that. And then Dulcie gets him to do whatever she wants him to do, which is really funny. So anyways, I'm really enjoying that one. I'm about 5 or 6 chapters in. And then I'm reading for my BTS book club this year, or this month. The prompt was, for the challenge, the prompt was a book that reminds you of a BTS song, and or of your favorite BTS song. And so my favorite song, one of my favorite songs, is called On. And if you watch the music video, it's quite fantasy related, and it's, you know, kind of a where the guys are thank you, Raven, where the guys are you know, escaping from this bad situation and all that sort of thing. And so it's kind of fantasy related. It's also basically about, you know, not giving up, even when things are tough. You know, it says, bring the pain on, you know, I'm, you know, gonna survive, sort of thing. And so I decided to read this one, which I'll put around Raven. It's called God of Vengeance. It's by Giles Christian. It's actually a Viking era novel, and it does have some fantasy elements to it, which is why I picked it, because of the fantasy elements. And also because it's basically kind of a story of a guy who he's struggling to, you know, survive after some very bad things happen. And he becomes a warrior and, you know, a fighter, and, you know, doesn't let himself be destroyed by the stuff that happened. And so basically what it is, it's about a guy named Sigurd, and his father was one of the Jarls, and his father gets betrayed by the king that he's oath sworn to, and his family gets murdered, and but he ends up surviving. And it's about him going after vengeance. He, you know, becoming a warrior, going after vengeance, trying to, you know, avenge his family. So it's definitely a action book. I'm a little ways into it already. I have read this one before and I enjoyed it. And it's a trilogy, and I never read the other 2 in the trilogy because I have a bad habit of doing that, because I'm afraid that stuff is going to happen, and I just quit reading. So my goal is to finish some trilogies this year. So I actually have, I was going to reread this one, and then I have the other one on another challenge, the next one on another challenge. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at with that one. And it's very action packed. The one thing that I find funny is you can definitely tell that it was written by a man, because the banter between the guys and everything is very crude, and it's just kind of funny that way. You kind of have to not be sensitive to that sort of thing. But I find it kind of funny because it does remind me of when I worked with all men at the power plant, and the kind of banter that would go on amongst my male friends there. So anyways, but I can definitely tell the difference because I write Viking Age fantasy as well. And I can definitely tell the difference between when a man writes it and when a woman writes it, which is just kind of a funny aside. But anyways, so far I'm enjoying it again. And I like the characters in it. I'm still quite early in the story, but once it gets further into the story, you really start to get attached to some of the characters. So I remember that from the last time I read it. So anyways, that's my update for now, and I will check in with you guys later when I've read some more. All right, everybody, time for a little update from me and Raven. So I did end up reading about 50 pages, 60 pages of the Tom Clancy book. And then I kind of just skimmed through the rest to see if it was something that I would actually want to read. And I decided to DNF it. It's not, a bad book or anything. It's just that I was sitting there looking at this 750-page book and thinking, every time I would look at it and think, ugh, I really have to pick that up and read some more, don't I? And so then I got to thinking, why am I forcing myself to read a genre that I'm just not interested in anymore? And so basically, and see, this is what's helpful with this Read It or Unhaul It, is I'm learning which genres I still want to actually collect. And back when I was in university and I was studying engineering, I really enjoyed these, military thrillers and, the technical aspects of them. Whereas now that I'm not doing that anymore and I'm, in a completely different space, I am not into them anymore. So it was good. I learned that I don't really want to keep these. So I am going to unhaul this one. And I just went through the bin downstairs, and I think I had 4 more Tom Clancy, and I had 2 Robert Ludlum that I decided I would unhaul as well, because I'm just not into like the whole spy military thriller thing anymore. So I am going to unhaul those. And then a little update on this one here, 6 Warriors. I'm just a little ways into it. This one is going to take me a little while because it is actually quite a heavy read, which, it's about the Second World War and people's stories in it. So that's kind of why it's quite heavy. It's good. You're hearing everything in like its actual like transcripts basically of the interviews. Like he's telling the stories in their own words, and some of them are, a paragraph long, some of them are 2 or 3 pages, but it is heavy. The first section was about why people decided to join up and go to war. And the one story about a guy who his best friend's older brother got killed in the war, and his older brother had been, a hero to both of them. So, that's why he joined up. And then there was one story about a guy where the day that he left to go to Europe and saying goodbye to his family and everything. So it's really heavy. Some of those things. There's some fun stories in there as well. But a lot of it's very heavy because it is based on the war. So it is going to take me a while to read that one, but I'm going to keep going with it. And I don't think I'm going to pick another one from the jar right now, because I do have those other ones that I'm also reading at the same time, the Cat Mystery and the Viking book. So I think I'm just going to keep going and finish those ones and the nonfiction book and for this vlog, and not pick another fiction one out of the bin yet, but that has helped me to reduce my numbers a little bit again, and I will let you know when I finish this one. All right, it is finally time to finish this vlog. I've been waiting on this one for quite a while, mainly because it took me a long time to get through this book. It's 417 pages, but there was a lot of really heavy reading in it, so that's why it took me so long as a nonfiction. So I may as well talk about this book since I'm holding it. So this is Six Warriors, 1939 to 1945, Memories of Canadians at Home and Abroad by Barry Broadfoot. And this one here is basically what he did is he went around in the 70s and he interviewed people who had lived through that period of the war. And then he gathered all their stories, and they're all anonymous, but he gathered all their stories and put them into a book. And it's all written in the voices of the people, like it's like directly written, the stories as they told them. And it's really, really interesting because you get a lot of, you know, what kind of slang they used back then, and just, you know, each person's unique experiences. And it was, he talked to people who had gone overseas in the war, who had gone to Europe, and who had gone to Japan, or I guess had gone to Hong Kong, and then a lot of them ended up as POWs. And so he talked to them, and he talked to people who were fighting on the home front, and to people who were just at home dealing with the fact that so many people had left. And, you know, there was the good, the bad, and the ugly to do with war. So it was very, very interesting, and I highly recommend it to people. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars, and yeah, I highly, highly recommend it. He has a couple of other ones that he did. I've read his one, The Lost Years, 1929 to 1939, which is where he interviewed people who had gone through the Great Depression. And then he does also have one called Years of Sorrow, Years of Shame, where he interviewed the Japanese people who had been put in the internment camps in Canada during the war. And I have that one as well, but I haven't read it yet. In this book, he did just one chapter on them, but he did do a whole book about that period because that was a bad time in Canadian history. And he also did one on the pioneer years, 1895 to 1914, which I haven't read, but I think I do own. So I'm looking forward to reading those other ones eventually because they are very, very interesting. And I like the fact that somebody actually went and recorded the history like that. So that's that one. I already told you guys my thoughts on this one. After thinking about it a little bit more, I've actually downgraded it to 2 stars from 2.5 just because I really, really didn't like this book. But I've already told you guys about that. And I DNF'd the Tom Clancy one, and I'm unhauling a bunch of my Tom Clancy and Robert Ludlum ones because I'm just not into military fiction anymore. And then the other one that I was reading during the challenge that I'd been talking about but hadn't actually finished at the time, it's not for a challenge, was this one here, Cat Raised the Dead by Shirley Rousseau Murphy. This one is the third one in the Joe Gray mystery series with the talking cats. And it's a cozy mystery series about Joe Gray and Dulcie, his female cat companion. And the two of them discover one day that they can actually speak human language and think human thoughts. And it ends up, they end up starting to solve mysteries because they can go places and do things that humans can't. So it's a really fun series. I had read the first 6 or so, like 20 years ago. And so I'm doing a full reread of the series. This one in particular was I have a lot of nostalgia with this one because this one was the very first one that I had ever read. I had picked it up at the library when I was in high school. And so I have a lot of nostalgia with this one. It was just really funny reading it again now because there's like so much sexism in it. And so it was really funny to read it now as compared to back, 20 years ago when I didn't notice those things. So it's just interesting. But I do like the way, because Joe is a tough old tomcat, kind of thing. And he says and does some really stupid things, like a lot of men. But I like the foil of Dulcie with him because she's like this strong, independent sassy girl, and she like, you know, tells him off when he's being stupid. And yeah, so she's a good foil for him. So anyways, I really enjoy this whole series, so I will be reading more of them. I have the fourth one out from the library right now because I can't find my copy of it. And then yeah, so I don't have all of the ones in the series, but I am doing a reread. So that was that set of Read It and Unhaul It. So I've got, yeah, I had 1 4.5 star, 1 2 star that I'm unhauling, and then I am unhauling those other ones that I DNF'd, and then I finished the Cat Raised the Dead one, and I ended up giving that one 4 stars. So I will see you guys on the next one when I pull more books out of my giant jar. Bye!